There. Okay. Hi. I would like to talk or introduce visualization method of complex system. It's a, I would say it's a design approach. It's a communication approach, which is about seeing systems and trying to visualize them, and then trying to talk about it a little bit. And this might be an example of a system. I think it's a butterfly which lays eggs in a banana-like fruit, and then there's the lizard eating the larvae, and then some of the larvae are not eaten, and then the butterfly flies up, something like that. Anyway, it can be recognized as a cyclus and as a system, perhaps. And I think it's an interesting example of how you can think of systems. I think some people believe that you can see systems, like in nature. They are you can observe them. And others might think that the systems occur in your heads when you see things, like cultural stuff, for example. So, what is gigamapping? Actually, it's not a new thing. It's about mapping super complex things, systems, lots of things, and really a lot more than you are actually, that you think you might be interested in order to get some data to look at afterwards and analyze. So, in my work as a designer mostly, I've been working quite a lot with environmental aspects, sustainability aspects within design in the later years, and then we have observed products, we have picked products apart, and then we have sort of told the story. And this is a toothbrush from Gulden. You might know Gulden toothbrushes. And this is a 25-gram piece of plastic, and the top line, you see all the materials within one toothbrush. You have the handle, you have the bristles, you have the consumer pack, and then C-pack and distribution pack, etc. And when we visualized it, instead of making a report, the people at Gulden found it really interesting to see how extremely complex their toothbrush was. It looks like a big machine, I think, when it comes to all the different materials used, and the green ellipses are transportation intervals, and then the white rectangulars are processing, different kind of processing around the world, actually. So the blue background is in-house production, and the rest is outside the factory. And mainly it's in Malaysia where they do the stuff. And what they saw, of course, was it looks expensive. And this they didn't know before, because this information sort of took very many different departments at Gulden into one picture. So we found it to be a very efficient way to talk to these people about their own products. And we did it on different levels. This is materials into the factory, energy and water into the factory, and out again. And while working like this, we found it a bit, interesting to try to place it on the sort of the area within the client that we worked for. So this is actually waste management at a company that works with the railroad in Norway, and we pictured all the different kinds of fragments of waste that they have. And the green lines here are the different companies that comes and collect it. And the client's first comment here was the same. This looks very expensive, because they have 2, 3, 6, 9 different companies coming to collect their waste. So working like this for some time with business and industry, we found the method interesting. So therefore I've been looking more into the process of gigamapping. And mostly gigamapping is about trying to look for relations. Like in this example here, this here could be me. And then we have, oops. Well, the commands is lost because of the, we'll just do like this. This is you, in a way. As a graphic setup. And then we have a bunch here, but that takes too much time. But this is sort of the main idea of I'm mapping us now. And then you might say, we could also take the picture from that side, and then we will see the amphi, and then you will see that I'm here, and I'm taller than some of you, and lower than some of you, and some of you have to look upwards, and etc. So this is just dry information about you and me, and then what we look for after a while is different connections, and I think it's kind of difficult to look for these other types of relations when it comes to how to analyze, visualize the information. I will try to explain. This is an example of how you can look on things differently. If you have a bicycle and you turn the wheel around, it's easy to picture the geometrical form that the valve makes or the wheel makes, right? It's circular. Do you agree? Okay. And if you put the bicycle on the ground and you roll it like this, this is the pattern that the valve makes. It's a very different picture, but it's the same movement for the valve. So just by looking at something from a little bit different angle, you get a very different picture. I think this is interesting, and I've been doing similar stuff with trying to look differently on strategic analysis of interval running. This is so. I was having this meeting at the Norwegian Agency of Form, and I was thinking that we did not do a very good job in being innovative. So I was running, and then I was thinking, okay, let me try to visualize my own run, and then I can tell them afterwards, and then try to talk about how we can look at this agency in a different way. So this is me running. The lines here are intervals that I do, and then I have low speed and high speed. And this is what I think is a typical and boring picture of interval training. I lose fat, I take up more oxygen, etc. So then I ask myself, how can I look at this picture differently? So then I looked for when am I most happy while I'm running. Then when I have high speed, I'm only dreading for the low speed, I'm only dreading for the high speed. And then almost at the end, I'm very happy because it's almost over. And then when it's at the end, I'm starting actually to dread for the next interval again. So that's how I feel sometimes when I run interval running. And then I continued this, my contact with nature while running. So slow, I feel the humid and the snow in my face and the colors and squeaking sounds of snow, etc. And then when I run fast, I only see distance. When I see that tree, I'm finished, etc. And I continue contact with music. You get the picture. Contact with passing people. Murakami has written a book about running, and he said that he always took the same slope in New York because he always met this beautiful lady at the end of the park. So here I can say that while running slow, I have eye contact with people, I can recognize them, We can be long, perhaps. We're both running in the woods, etc. And then, while I'm running really, really fast, maybe I'm very impressed by myself, and then I hope that they will say, "Wow, he's really fast," etc. Actually it's embarrassing but honest. So this is how. Let's see. Yes, there was a bit, because I think it's, okay, interesting, and then, of course, to look at all these graphs together. So what does this mean? Are there any interesting points here? Could any of these thoughts make grounds for a new design thought, for example? Does any new concepts emerge out of this way of thinking? Instantly, I think it's a difficult task. But I think that, like a Nike Plus, do you know Nike Plus concept? Things like that occur or emerge out of this kinds of thinking. They're not making running clothes anymore, or they are thinking about what kind of music and what kind of behavioral psychology they want to put into the clothing for you to run faster, for example. So, looking then at this sketch again, I think when we ask new questions here, the interesting stuff comes, looking at this differently. Like, are there any chewing gums under the desks here? For sure, I know there's one here. So I'll draw it in. Does anyone wear glasses? Yes. Has any of you kissed? Probably. And do any of you have parents that are artists? I am positive. Etc. How many of you had a piano at home? And how many of you, do any of you smoke? And you can keep on asking these questions, and then you can ask for, then when you see the pictures emerging, with the chewing gums and the backgrounds and your goals for life, etc., you might see some tendencies there then. Like here in this section, we have the ones of you that have rich parents, for example, and you choose to sit together. Some of you have kissed. You keep on putting that chewing gum up under the, and then we might look upon this room for pedagogical purposes differently, perhaps. So, in GIGAMAPPING, the main point is not to have the information, but to look at the information and see what the relations are. So if we have one smoker and one non-smoker and one piano player here, we can ask, what are the relations between these two people? How do they interact because of the situation that we have found, for example? So, GIGAMAPPING could be used very pragmatic way. This is me trying to understand an article that I found really difficult. So I took the important stuff that I found, and I tried to group it, and then I see, how does this fit with that? Do they have any connection? Do they tell a new story if I put them together differently, etc.? And let's see. This is student work from the class that I have in GIGAMAPPING, where you see there's quite a bit of information here. And all the lines that you see are connections that they find interesting. Of course, I think after this stage, they need to make small diagrams so they can go in and zoom on one part and say, this part is interesting. I would like to take a closer look at this part, and then they will make some new studies, new visualizations, etc. Now, when you come to this stage here, and you see, let's see, yes, well, for example, this one, it shows that it's really good for cooperation. And I think this is one of the main functions of GIGAMAPPING, is that if you work for a client, you can make a GIGAMAPPING, and then you can take it with you in the role, and then you can show it, and then they would say, this is crazy, this is not us. First, I work here, and our strategy is not like that, but like that, and then they can, you know, cooperate in a way and react. And also, in many places where more people work together, it can be interdisciplinary work. People that work on different departments can react on the same report. I think designers often make small books that are really, you know, takes time to enter in a way, but big boards are easy accessible. And the less words, the quicker information perhaps. This map here is from military studies. That's interesting. We see a lot of different stuff on conferences, different disciplines that use this in order to find stuff and in order to communicate. I think it's about, yes, Afghanistan stability. What, you know, the Americans think they have learned when it comes to intervenence in a country. So perhaps the first time they did something, they would bomb the bad guy, and then the whole system would be unstable. And therefore, they, by looking at it this way, they see that they have to do different stuff in addition to bomb the good guys. I think they should still be working on that. Yes, and this is ski binding, Rottefella from Norway. This is a student who mapped how people were treated in shops, and she found that the most professional got the most time in ski shops in Norway, and the people that knew the least, they were not very interesting for the shop. But probably the people that they could earn the most money on in a way. And she just pictured it. And this is also, I think I saw one study from the military in the US studies where they actually visualized every kill in Iraq, casualty as they call them, but then from their own soldiers, and then they found that every soldier that died in Iraq, they died either passing a corner of a house or in a doorway, because they saw all the kills on the map. And then they found that the new strategy was to not pass corners and not go through doors anymore, which is practical and pragmatic. But of course, when they started making holes in walls to go through houses, there were some reactions. But anyway, it's interesting that they didn't find out where people died before they had to visualize it. And see, they are in a way they are struggling with how to visualize stuff. This looks more like a data flow chart from the olden days, and then they try to cluster information, like if you have 5 or 6 things that they think mean the same stuff or belongs to the same group, they make it one group out of it, and then they try to make interesting relations with yellow arrows and red arrows, etc. The problem, of course, is that some of these maps, they become very, very large. They are 8 to 10 meters, and then they become more like reports again. But this here is a GIGAMAPPING, and also concept suggestions in the right corner. I think the good thing here is that some of the students that I have now, they don't make reports anymore. You know, some of our students make 150 pages of report. Do you? No? So I think it might be interesting, of course, but it takes a lot of time and it's difficult to share. And I think that there's a nice balance there somewhere. Yes. Just different ones. And I think one interesting example of working further with this kind of work is that it doesn't have to be graphical. You don't have to make them in InDesign or Illustrator or anything. You can do it, you know, tangible with hard stuff, and also discuss a bit more. Like I attended this one workshop once where we got different materials. I will not touch that, but you know, if you touch this, for example, this connection here, it gives you. You feel, when you feel it, you think something. If you would get a wool thread, or if you would a wire, metal wire, etc., you would probably give them different descriptions. Like the wool is sort of warm and soft, and this is, I don't know, softy, but it has some friction to it. And then when you start to think like that, you know, soft but friction, perhaps that goes for you and you when I draw a line between you. And there might be some frictions there, but there are also some, you know, easy communication because you know about this friction. So there might be one of these threads and then one a bit more slippery and cold, for example. So this is how you can try to discuss relations between information that you have, which I find interesting. Okay, I'm finished.